registration under GST. That's it, 10. See, registration, this attempt will be very, very important because there are some good number of amendments applicable for November 21 exam or December 21 exam. So therefore, due to that reason, so you can be focusing more on to this registration chapter. So because amendments are there, and for the last two attempts they didn't touch much questions on registration, so be careful with respect to this first. So there are total 9 sections related to registration chapter here, and these 9 sections I am just giving you. So these are divided into 3. Registration chapter, total 9 sections are there, that is divided into 3. Legality, procedural, then procedural, and then special cases, and that 9 sections I am just filling into this. So section 22, so when a person is liable to get registered, that is given in section 22. And section 23, exemption from registration. So few cases a person is not required to get registered, exempted from registration. Whereas section 24, compulsory registration. There are few cases where a person is compulsorily required to get registered, that is section 24. Whereas procedural we have 3 sections. Section 25 deals with procedure for registration, and section 27, that is registration of a non-resident taxable person, non-resident taxable person and a casual taxable person, what are the provisions applicable to them. And section 26, that is that, then 27 is deemed registration. Whereas section 28, 29 and 30. Section 28 is amendment in registration. So whenever we make an application for registration, we would have given some details. If there is any amendment in those details, so we need to submit a form. So amendment in registration. Whereas section 29, cancellation of registration. Whereas section 30, that is revocation of cancellation of registration. So even if you are not remembering all these sections, at least try to remember these 3 sections. So section 22, when a person is liable to get registered. Section 23, exemption from registration. Section 24, compulsory registration. So now we are completing that first. As per section 22, so whenever a person exceeds the threshold limit, they are required to get registered. So whenever their aggregate turnover exceeds the threshold limit, that person is required to get registered. What is the meaning of threshold limit? So that threshold limit, we need to check whether they are doing business in one state or they are doing business in multiple states. Suppose if they are doing business in one state, so then we have the threshold limit. So we need to see whether that one state is in MMTN, Manipur, Mizoram, Tripura, Nagaland. Okay, Manipur, Mizoram, Tripura, Nagaland, MMTN. Then the applicable threshold limit will be 10 lakhs. Let they be engaged in supply of goods or supply of services or both. So 10 lakhs is the threshold limit. For example, I am doing business in Nagaland. So my aggregate turnover is 11 lakhs. I should register. And I am doing business in Tripura. So my aggregate turnover is 8 lakhs. I am not required to get registered. So if I am doing business in only one state, that's what I am discussing first. And MMTN, the applicable threshold limit will be 10 lakhs. And suppose if I am doing business in U stamp, only one state, and that one state is in U stamp. What is U stamp? U for Uttarakhand, S for Sikkim, T for Telangana, and A for Arunachal Pradesh, M for Meghalaya, and P for Pondicherry, Puducherry. If I am doing business in any one of these states, and then the applicable threshold limit will be 20 lakhs. Let it be goods or let it be services or both. Okay. So applicable threshold limit will be 20 lakhs. So MMTN 10 lakhs and U stamp it will be 20 lakhs. U for Uttarakhand, S for Sikkim, T for Telangana, A for Arunachal Pradesh, M for Meghalaya and P for Puducherry. And then any other state. In case of any other state, if I am doing business, so then the applicable threshold limit will be, if I am exclusively engaged in supply of goods, 40 lakhs. If I am engaged in supply of both goods and services or services, it will be 20 lakhs. So exclusively supply of goods only 40 lakhs. And moreover, I should not be engaged in exclusive supply of pan masala, edible ice, tobacco and tobacco products, ice cream, but not aerated waters. Aerated waters here it is not there. And here should I be manufacturer? You can be manufacturer or you can be trader. So if you are a manufacturer or a trader, you cannot go for 40 lakhs threshold limit. So it is only 20 lakhs threshold limit that will be applicable. So see that important points. In that important points, see the last point. The limit of 40 lakhs is not applicable in the following cases. Person who voluntarily got registered, because already they registered, so not applicable. Person who are compulsorily required to register. So compulsory registration under section 24 is irrespective of threshold limit, they need to register. So then also no need to check for 40 lakhs. Whereas person making supply of ice cream, edible ice, pan masala, tobacco and tobacco products, full stop, not aerated waters. That aerated waters is there only in composition scheme. So manufacturer of these notified goods cannot opt for composition scheme. Here either manufacturer or trader of these goods, only these goods, cannot get 40 lakhs of threshold limit. It is only 20 lakhs of threshold limit that will be applicable. Okay. So therefore the threshold limit we have understood if you are doing business only in one state. And aggregate turnover will never be computed on a state-wise basis, all India basis. And the limit of 40 lakhs is applicable only in case of exclusive supply of goods. And aggregate turnover, what is the meaning of aggregate turnover already we have learnt. So therefore here just aggregate turnover you need to know, and in that aggregate turnover we will be taking interest income also, and this aggregate turnover will be computed for the current year. So what is the meaning of aggregate turnover, we know that. And if a person is engaged in exclusive supply of services or supply of both goods and services, 40 lakhs is not applicable, either 20 or 10 lakhs should be considered. Now, here comes the next case. Suppose if you are doing business in multiple states and if taxable supplies are made in any of the special category states, then the applicable threshold limit will be 10 lakhs. That is, you are doing business in 3 states, that is Tamil Nadu, Karnataka and Nagaland. Now, in these 3 states, one state is a special category state, Nagaland. And are you making taxable supply in Nagaland? Yes. Then the applicable threshold limit for these businesses is, that is aggregate turnover will be 10 lakhs only. It is not 20 lakhs, it is not 40 lakhs. So it is 10 lakhs only. And therefore, these 3 businesses cumulatively, if the aggregate turnover exceeds 10 lakhs, that person is required to get registered. Suppose, so Tamil Nadu, Karnataka and Nagaland, in Nagaland I am making exempted supplies, not taxable supplies. Then will the 10 lakhs be applicable? No, general, 20 lakhs will be applicable. Why not 40 lakhs? 40 lakhs is not applicable if you are doing, out of the given states in which you are doing business, if any one state is MMTN use stamp, MMTN use stamp, MMTN use stamp, you understood or not? So 40 lakhs will not come. 40 lakhs will not come in case of MMTN use stamp. In the given list of states, if you are doing any supply, exempted or taxable, any supply, if you are doing business in those states, then 40 lakhs will not come. You understood or not? So in these states, 40 lakhs will not be applicable. If you are having any one state out of the given states in which you are doing business, so if one state is MMTN use stamp, these 10 states if it is there, you cannot take 40 lakhs. So it will be only 20 lakhs only that will be applicable. That is this. So next point, if supplies are made from multiple states, and in those states, if use stamp is also one of the states, then the threshold limit will be 20 lakhs only. So then when 40 lakhs will be applicable, you are doing business in multiple states, in that special category state should not be there, use stamp state should not be there, all are the other states, and then if you are engaged exclusively in supply of goods, then it will be, 40 lakhs will be applicable. And so 40 lakhs is not applicable in the following cases. So this is about section 22. So section 22 says, as and when aggregate turnover during a financial year exceed threshold limit, so as discussed above, that person is liable to get registered. Then exemption from registration, that is given in section 23. So few people, whatever may be their aggregate turnover, they are exempted from registration. Okay. For use stamp, is it taxable supplies? Not necessary. So if you are making taxable supply or exempted supply in use stamp, if you are making supply of goods in use stamp, you will not get 40 lakhs. For that MMTN only, it should be taxable supplies. Okay. So if taxable supplies are made in special category states only, it will be 10 lakhs. For use stamp states, you can make taxable supply or exempted supply. 40 lakhs limit is not applicable. Okay. Then next, exemption from registration, if you are exclusively engaged in exempted supplies, including non-taxable supplies, then you are not required to get registered. And an agriculturist, to the extent out of cultivation of land, is also not required to get registered. Only if they are engaged exclusively in exempted supplies. So including non-taxable supplies. If they are making both exempted supplies as well as taxable supplies, so we need to count the aggregate turnover, and if it crosses the threshold limit, they need to register. If they are engaged in non-taxable supplies and taxable supplies, if their aggregate turnover crosses the threshold limit, they need to register. Only exempted and only non-taxable, not at all required to get registered. And agriculturist, to the extent out of cultivation of land. So whatever is a cultivation of land, if they are selling, they are not required to get registered. Let that cultivation of land be taxable or it may be exempted. We don't have to bother about what type of product it is. So if they are engaged only in sale of agricultural produce which comes out of cultivation of land, so then they are exempted. So but there should not be trader of agricultural produce, there should be cultivator of the agricultural produce, that is agriculturist. Then only that exemption is available. What if a cultivator of agricultural produce is selling the agricultural produce, also selling some processed goods? Then we will count total, and if it crosses the threshold limit, they are required to get registered. But of course they will pay GST on the taxable supplies, whatever are the taxable supplies. And exclusively engaged in RCM supplies. My outward supply is completely covered under RCM. I am not having any liability. So I am exempted from registration, on which the recipient anyhow will pay tax. So I am not at all required to register. But again, I should be exclusively engaged in RCM supplies. Okay, if a person is making both exempted and taxable, then the above exemption is not available. Only 3 cases you need to remember. Exclusively exempted supplies. Exempted include non-taxable, agriculturist to the extent out of cultivation of land, exclusively RCM supplies. They are exempted from registration as per section 23. And in section 22 also, in few cases we have compulsory registration. If a person is already registered under the earlier law, say under service tax or excise act, etc., so he should also get registered under GST even though his aggregate turnover does not exceed the threshold limit. And thereafter he can make application for cancellation of registration. And when there is a transfer of business, so when there is a transfer of business, normal transfer of business, so then the transferee should definitely obtain the registration. And when there is a transfer pursuant to a court or tribunal order, amalgamation, merger pursuant to a court or tribunal order, then also the transferee should get registered compulsorily. This is under section 22. Whereas in section 24 also few compulsory registrations are there. Whenever I am saying compulsory registration, what does it mean? So it means that irrespective of the aggregate turnover, I need to register. That is the meaning of compulsory registration. Yes, sir.
Sir,
Yes.
sir, in case a person crosses the threshold limit and he is engaged in taxable supplies in one state and only exempted supplies in another state, will he have to get registered in the second state where he is only engaged in exempted supplies also?
Okay. So when a person is making taxable supplies in one state and exempted supplies in another state, we will count both for the purpose of aggregate turnover. And if the aggregate turnover exceeds the threshold limit, then he is required to get registered on only those states where he makes taxable supply. In those states where he make exempted supply, only exempted supply, 23 will come into picture. So 23 overrides 22. So therefore they are not required to get registered in those states where they are making exempted supplies. But the turnover will be taken for computing the aggregate turnover. Understood?
Same provision for non-taxable supplies also.
Same provision for non-taxable also. Because exempted includes non-taxable supply. Okay.
Yes.
Then, so compulsory registration under section 24. So I creations, mnemonic I creations, I for interstate supply of goods. What goods? Taxable goods other than handicrafts. If I am making interstate supply of taxable goods other than handicrafts, so then I am compulsorily required to register. What if I am making interstate supply of exempted goods only? Anyhow exempted goods I am not at all required to get registered. And then I am making taxable supplies within the state, exempted supplies outside the state. then I am not required to compulsorily register. And I am making taxable supply of services interstate, I am not compulsorily required to register. I will register only when my aggregate turnover exceed threshold limit. I am making taxable supply of handicrafts interstate, then also I will register as and when aggregate turnover exceed the threshold limit. I will not register now. Then see, for casual taxable person other than handicrafts, suppose if I am a casual taxable person of handicrafts, generally every casual taxable person should get registered in the other state at least 5 days before commencement of the business. But in case of handicrafts, they are not compulsorily required to get registered. So usually these handicraft people will go to multiple states and they will put their products in display over the exhibition, trade fair, etc. And only if their aggregate turnover exceeds 20 lakhs, they are required to register, otherwise they are not required to register. So but any other casual taxable person, yes, they are required to get registered compulsorily. Then R, recipient who is liable to pay GST under RCM section 9 subsection 3. There are some notified goods and services under section 9 subsection 3. In respect of those notified goods and services under 9 subsection 3, liability to pay GST is on the recipient, and that recipient, once it is liability to pay is on recipient, we don't have to see whether that recipient is registered or not registered. So definitely that recipient only is liable to pay GST under RCM, so they need to get registered. Example, in case of legal services provided by an advocate, not legal service, GTA services provided by a GTA to a person, a partnership firm, but that partnership firm during the previous year or current year aggregate turnover does not exceed the threshold limit, but GTA opted not to pay GST under FCM, then that partnership firm is required to pay GST under RCM at the rate of 5%, and they are not registered. They are compulsorily required to get registered to pay GST. That is this 9 subsection 3. Then I, C, R, E for e-commerce operator. Which e-commerce operator? E-commerce operator liable to pay GST under 9 subsection 5. 9 subsection 5 is that there are some notified services: housekeeping service, accommodation service, and transportation of passenger service. HAT, you remember, HAT. So what are the notified services under 9 subsection 5? HAT. H for housekeeping services, A for accommodation services, and T for transportation services. So in case of housekeeping services, example, Goa Bibo, Make My Trip, etc. And in case of housekeeping, that is Urban Clap, Quicker, etc. And in case of accommodation services, so that is Goa Bibo, Make My Trip, Oyo Room, etc. And T is transportation of passengers. So transportation of passengers, that is Ola, Uber, etc. So if suppose that e-commerce operator is liable to pay GST under 9.5, only 3 services are covered under 9.5, then that e-commerce operator is compulsorily required to get registered, or e-commerce operator is liable to deduct TCS under section 52. So then also that e-commerce operator is liable to get registered. Then agent, TCS under GST, not TCS under income tax. Then agent making supply of goods or service on behalf of supplier. So that agent is also compulsorily required to get registered. It is both goods or services. So the law uses the word both goods and services. So there is an agent who is representing the service provider, and on behalf of principal they are rendering the services. Even that agent is also compulsorily required to get registered. Then TDS deductor under section 51 of GST, and that is CREAT. I for input service distributor. So in input tax credit chapter we have seen that there is a head office which will distribute the credit to the branch office. So that head office is compulsorily required to get registered. Then O for OIDR supplier, who is located outside India and making supply to a non-taxable online recipient in India. Who is a non-taxable online recipient? Any person unregistered importing services for personal purpose. Any person unregistered importing services for personal purpose is known as a non-resident taxable person. And say for example Netflix subscription you take, you are paying 199 rupees per month for the Netflix subscription. So supplier is OIDR service provider. OIDR refers to online information database access and retrieval services. Where the supplier is located, outside India located, and where are you located? You are located in India. You are a non-taxable online recipient. You are unregistered CA final student. So where from you are, taxable recipient, you are a non-taxable online recipient, and you are importing that for what purpose? For your personal purpose. Therefore, in that case, liability to pay GST is on the supplier who is located outside India, that is Netflix, and they need to compulsorily register in India, that is this. Why dear supplier located outside India making supply to a non-taxable recipient in India? Then N for non-resident taxable person who come from outside India to India. So that person also compulsorily required to get registered. And yes is supplier of goods through e-commerce operator, not supplier of services through e-commerce operator. So both supplier of goods and services through e-commerce operator is ineligible for composition scheme. That is for composition scheme. But here, supplier of goods through e-commerce operator is compulsorily required to get registered, whereas supplier of services through e-commerce operator not compulsorily required to get registered. They need to register only when their aggregate turnover exceeds the threshold limit. So these are the cases that we have in section 24 where a person is compulsorily required to get registered. Okay, we completed 3 sections: section 22, section 23 and section 24. 22, who are required to get registered and when are they required to get registered. 23, exempted from registration. 24, compulsory registration. Now listen carefully. Sir, which section will override we need to know. I am making outward supplies. When I am making outward supplies which are covered under RCM, I am exempted from registration. On my inward supply I need to pay GST under RCM. So should I compulsorily register? Because if you see section 23, as my outward supply is completely RCM, I am exempted from registration. But as per 24, when I make some inward supply on which I need to pay GST under RCM, I need to register compulsorily. So which section I need to follow? Section 24 overrides only section 22 subsection 1, not section 23. Okay. So section 24 overrides section 22 subsection 1 only. That is, wherever a person is required to get registered when aggregate turnover exceeds threshold limit, and in that case when compulsory registration is there, so that is applicable, then the person is compulsorily required to get registered. But 22 is not. So which means 23 is not, which means that when a person is exempted from registration, he is exempted from registration. So what is the order? So order is order of sections is first section 23. So a person is exempted from registration, means exempted. Whatever the case may be, he is exempted from registration. Number 2, section 22 subsection 2, then section 22 subsection 3, section 22 subsection 4. That is these 3 cases: registered under earlier scheme, transfer of business, transfer pursuant to a scheme of amalgamation, and section 24. So this is compulsory registration, and remaining cases only section 22 subsection 1. So whenever aggregate turnover exceeds threshold limit, that person is required to get registered. Okay, so this is one important area which can be tested in exam. Be careful with respect to this. Any doubt in these 3 sections that we have discussed so far? Any doubt here? So can we do one question on this? Okay. No queries? So we'll see one question. You please take question number 84. Yes, sir.
In the important points which you have discussed, no, the 4th point applies to only MMTN, sir.
Which one? These important points.
The 4th point is applicable only for MMTN, right?
Only MMTN, because special category state is only MMTN.
Okay, so in the 3rd point, it is applicable for all, right?
It is applicable for other than MMTN and use stamp. Because only when you are exclusively supply of goods 40 lakhs, both supply of goods and services, it will be 20 lakhs or 10 lakhs. So for MMTN use stamp, it will never be 40 lakhs na. First, section 25 deals with the procedure for registration. So there is a basic procedure involving 6 forms. Form GST REG 1 to REG 6. So first you need to know what is the purpose of these forms. REG 1 is application for registration, and in that application there will be 2 parts. Part A, which contains the basic details, and part B, which contains the like more details about that person. So like what is their address and identification proof, what is their nature of business, promoter details, partner details, bank details, all those will be mentioned in part B. Part A contains just the basic details, like which state they wanted to obtain registration, and what is that their nature of are they input service distributor, TDS deductor, TCS deductor, or who are they, and then mobile number and email ID. That is about part A. So then after making application for registration, if application is like, immediately you will get a acknowledgement number, okay, that is known as application reference number. Acknowledgement number will be received, and REG 3 will be notice. So suppose if the application that we have submitted has got some discrepancies, like suppose if the address is given for the address proof, the rental agreement is given but the rental agreement is not notarized, or the EB is given but the EB is not proper. So in that case, that is EB bill. So if that is not proper, then in that case they will be giving an intimation to us asking for submit of certain details, that is known as a notice in REG 3. So once we get the notice in REG 3, what is the time limit for issuance of notice? Previously it was 3 working days and now it is 7 working days. So from the date of application, within 7 working days we need to get a notice. Previously it was 3 working days, they are now amended it to 7 working days. And then, so once we get the notice, we need to give reply to that notice, and that reply is also within 7 working days in REG 4. From the date of receipt of notice, within 7 working days the reply should be given, and that reply should be in REG 4. And thereafter REG 5. REG 5 is rejection of application. So once we make the application for registration, thereafter that registration application may be either accepted or may be rejected. And rejection of application in REG 5 and acceptance of application, they will pass a registration certificate. So registration they will complete, that is REG 6. So that rejection or certificate of registration should be given within 7 working days. So previously we had 3 working days in some place and 7 working days in some other places. Now in every place it will be 7 working days only. And suppose if there is no intimation, that is the notice is not given because everything is perfect, then within 7 working days they will grant the registration certificate. So application for registration should be submitted within 30 days from the date when a person is liable to get registered. Reason is, number 1, if the application for registration is not submitted within 30 days, then we will not get the benefit of section 18(1)(a). That is, so much of the GST paid on the closing stock can be availed as a TC. That benefit is not there if application is not made within 30 days. Also, a person who can give revised tax invoice for the outward supplies before the date up to which he get registration certificate. So from the date when he is liable to get registered till the date he gets certificate of registration, for that period he will be making some outward supplies. So with respect to that outward supplies, so he cannot issue tax invoice then and there. He can give a revised tax invoice at a later point of time. But that revised tax invoice is also possible if the application for registration is made within 30 days. So therefore, this is a condition that application should be made within 30 days from the date when a person is liable to get registered. And in case of CTP and NRTP, that is casual taxable person and non-resident taxable person who enters into, so non-resident taxable person enter into the India who is not having physical place of business, they will be making supply of goods and service on an occasional basis. So they, and casual taxable person who comes from the other state into this state or union territory and who is not having any physical place of business, they will be making supply of goods or service in the course or furtherance of their business on an occasional basis, should get a CTP registration. So these people should obtain registration, that is, should make application for registration at least 5 days before commencement of business, okay. Whereas all others, so they are required to make application within 30 days from the date when they are liable to get registered. And application will be in REG 2, REG 1, and time limit for REG 1 to 2 immediate, acknowledgement you will get immediately. Time limit from REG 1 to REG 3, application to acknowledgement, application to intimation 7 working days, REG1 to REG6, certificate of registration. If no intimation is given in or no notice is given, then registration certificate will be granted within 7 working days. REG3 to REG4, that is reply, should be within 7 working days. And REG4, once we give the reply, either rejection or certificate of registration within 7 working days. Then at the time of furnishing the application for registration, we need to give the bank details. However, the bank details can be submitted at a later point of time if the bank account is not yet opened, because one of the prerequisite to open a bank account is a GST registration certificate. So due to that reason, the bank account details can be furnished later also, but there is a time limit for that. That is 45 days from the date on which we get the registration certificate or the date on which we first file the GSTR 3B. So whichever is earlier. So by that time, we need to furnish the bank details. If we are not furnishing the bank details by that time, that is also one of the reason for suspension of registration, that is initiating cancellation of registration. So that is this. And then, so remember, 45 days from the date we get the registration certificate or due date of furnishing GSTR 3B, first return GSTR 3B, whichever is earlier should be taken. Okay. And then, once we make an application for registration, there is something called as Aadhaar authentication. So what is this Aadhaar authentication? Aadhaar authentication means that, so you have to undergo authentication at the time you make an application for registration, and you have an option. So it is not mandatory that everyone has to select that option. You may select not to have the Aadhaar authentication also. So therefore it is divided into two. Option 1. So you have selected Aadhaar authentication. Option 2. You have not selected Aadhaar authentication. So by default Aadhaar authentication will be selected. So if you click on that, it will close, which means that you have not selected the Aadhaar authentication. Then so we have an alternative means, that is verification of documents and physical verification of the premises, and thereafter they will be giving you the certificate of registration. So option 1, Aadhaar authentication. After submission of part B of REG1, an authentication link will be sent to the mobile number and email ID, and successful Aadhaar authentication to Aadhaar OTP. And so for your exam, we don't have this biometric and facial recognition. So, but it is also being implemented. So for your exam, it is not there, but I am just giving you that information. And registration certificate should be granted within 7 working days after Aadhaar authentication, else deemed registration. So previously 7 working days from the date of submission of application. Now the date on which authentication is completed, that date only will be taken as the date of submission of application. And if fails to authenticate via Aadhaar OTP within 15 days, then application is deemed to have been submitted on expiry of 15 days. So what will be taken as the date of submission of application? So as and when you complete the Aadhaar authentication, that is the date of submission of application, or 15 days from the date of part B filing part B, whichever is earlier. Suppose if you complete the authentication within 15 days, the date on which authentication is complete is the date of submission of application. If you have not completed within 15 days from the date you filed part B, okay, 15 days from when? The date you filed part B. After filing part B, part A, part B in application. So after filing part B, only within 15 days you need to complete the authentication. Otherwise the application is deemed to have been submitted. Now when you have submitted, means submitted without authentication. You have submitted without authentication. Whenever you submit an application without authentication, Aadhaar authentication, which means that, so there will be not verification of documents and physical verification. So officer will conduct the physical verification of the place of business within 30 days of application. Previously it was 21 days and now it has been amended to 30 days. So within 30 days of the application, they will be conducting the physical verification at the premises and they need to grant the registration certificate. So this 30 days will be counted after 15 days. So this 30 days will be counted after 15 days. So first 15 days you have time limit to do the authentication. You selected authentication, that's why. You selected authentication, you have time limit of 15 days, and after that 15 days only, so this will be coming. So officer will conduct the physical verification within 30 days after 15 days. Suppose if the officer is not completing the physical verification and granting the registration certificate within 30 days, then the registration is deemed to have been granted. Okay. After physical verification of place of business in presence, registration certificate will be granted. Failure to issue notice within 30 days or granting registration within 30 days of application, then deemed to have been registered. Okay. So now option 2, that is without selecting the authentication itself, you are entering into the registration. In that case, within 30 days from the date when you submitted the application, from that date itself it will be taken, because anyhow you selected without authentication, so they know that they have to do physical verification. So from the day you submit the application, so that 15 days will not come into picture. So within 30 days from the date you submitted the application, so the date of submission of application. So what is the meaning of date of submission of application? So the date when you file Part B itself. So from that date, within 30 days, the officer should complete the physical verification or either a notice to be given, otherwise registration is deemed to have been granted. Now see this note. If notice is received within specified period, then applicant need to file declaration. After filing declaration or clarification, officer should grant registration certificate within 7 working days or else deemed registration. Now we have multiple deemed registrations that are there. So we need to understand it in simple way. You completed, first step is what? First process is what? You completed the Aadhaar authentication. So within 15 days, you completed the Aadhaar authentication. The date when you complete the Aadhaar authentication is the date of application. From there, other proceedings will be normal. So within 7 working days, from the date you submitted the application, if the registration is not granted or notice is not given, it is deemed to have been registered. And you got a notice, you gave a reply to that notice. Within 7 working days from the date when you give the reply to the notice, you are not getting either rejection or certificate of registration, then also deemed registration. That is one. And then next thing is that you submitted the application for registration, but you did not complete the authentication within 15 days, and in that case within 30 days from the date on which the 15 days expires, so they need to complete the registration, otherwise deemed registration. Or you made an application without selecting authentication, then within 30 days from the date when you select the application, so you need to get the registration, otherwise it is deemed to have been granted. So these are the 4 different deemed registrations. So you can see that first, Aadhaar authentication completed, neither REG 3, that is notice nor certificate within 7 working days, deemed to be registered. Aadhaar authentication completed and they asked for they gave a notice and you made a reply. So neither REG 5 nor REG 6 within 7 working days from the date of that is reply. From the date of Aadhaar authentication here means from the date of reply. Okay, from the date of reply. From the date of reply. Okay, so because they gave neither REG 5 nor REG 6, so within 7 working days from the date of reply, then registration is deemed to have been granted. Aadhaar authentication not completed within 15 days of submission of Part B of REG 1 and registration not granted within 30 days from expiry of such 15 days, then registration is deemed to have been granted. Last case, you did not opt for Aadhaar authentication at all and registration not granted within 30 days of expiry of application, so then registration is deemed to have been granted. So these are the 4 deemed registration which you please remember. So this is very important, so they may be coining some MCQs based on this. Then to some people, Aadhaar authentication procedure is not at all applicable, which means that, so what will be the deemed registration? Whenever they make application within 30 days, they need to get, because for them, first of all, Aadhaar authentication is not applicable. Then it means what? So then it means some other verification. Okay. So not a citizen of India, partners other than authorized or managing partner. So what about partnership firm? So firm, managing partner or authorized partner required to undergo authentication, but other partners are not required to undergo authentication. Members other than Karta of a HUF, only Karta of a HUF is required to undergo authentication, but other members of HUF not required. Why not a citizen of India? So first of all, when he is not a citizen of India, where from there will be Aadhaar number. That's why. And then members of a company or a body corporate or entity other than authorized signatory. So for a company, only an authorized signatory is required to undergo authentication, others are not required. Central government or state government departments not at all required to undergo authentication. Then statutory body. Then local authority, public sector undertakings, And UIN holder, first of all, UIN holder, unique identification number holder, they are not a registered person, so they are getting the refund of GST paid on inward supply. For that they get a unique number, so just because they get that, they are not required to undergo authentication for that, because it is not a normal registration. So these people, this is the updated one, so these people are not required to undergo other authentication. So if they are not a citizen of India, partners other than authorized or managing partner, members other than Karta of HUF, and that is HUF, first you take individual. So easily you can remember individual. So in case of individual, every individual is required to undergo authentication unless they are not citizen of India. Then you take HUF. Karta is only required, other members not required. Partnership firm you take only managing partner, authorized partner, others not required. Then body corporate, company or any other entity, only authorized signatory, others are not required. Okay. So these 4 points you can remember. Then government related. Government related is what? Central government or state government department, local authority, public sector undertaking, statutory body. So that is also, next 4 is also easy. And last UIN holder. So UIN holder is first of all not a normal registration. So you remember this list because it can be asked as a short note question for 4 marks. Write any cases where other authentication is not applicable, or they can give an MCQ question as to when other authentication is not required. Okay. So that is this. So we completed deemed registration and other authentication. This is one updated area. Then time limit for making application for registration. So what is the time limit? I was already referring that at least 5 days before commencement of the business you should make application for registration if it is non-resident taxable person and casual taxable person. Whereas for all others, within 30 days from the date when they are liable to get registered. When are they liable to get registered? If you are covered under compulsory registration, the date when you commence a business, you are liable to get registered. So within 30 days from commencement of business, application should be filed. Suppose if you are transferring the business, so in case of transfer of business, so within 30 days from the date of transfer, the application should be made. And if it is transfer pursuant to a court order or tribunal order, so within 30 days from the date when transferee gets certificate of incorporation from ROC, from that date within 30 days, because that is the date they are liable to get registered. And in any other case, as and when the aggregate turnover exceeds the threshold limit, that person is liable to register from the date within 30 days. Okay. So this is the time limit for making application for registration. So deemed registration is there. Okay. So the deemed registration also we have discussed, and then special provisions for CTP and NRTP, that is given in section 27. Okay. So I have just changed the order in which I discussed the sections in the last class. So deemed registration is 26 and 27 will be special provision applicable to CTP and NRTP. Okay. So deemed registration, not what we have discussed, it's a different one. That is, once a person is registered under CGST Act, deemed to have registered under SGST Act or IGST Act. Once a person rejected registration under one act, it is deemed that the application is rejected under other acts also. Okay. So that is the deemed registration. So it's a small section, leave it. Then section 27, special provision applicable to CTP and NRTP. What is that special provision? First of all, these two people are not having any physical place of business in India. So they enter into India for making supply, that is in a state. So CTP is not having physical place of business in a state, NRTP is not having a physical place of business in country. So they make supply of goods or services. So they need to get a compulsory registration, because government will be losing revenue from them, because they will not be paying tax to any government. So they are coming to India. What if they make supply, they take money and leave? What if they come to a state and they make supply and they leave? So they will not be paying tax to the state where they are living in or where they have made supply in. So due to that reason. And these people are compulsorily required to get registered, but that's a temporary registration, that's not a permanent registration. So they don't have physical place of business now. So temporary registration. What is the period for which they will be granted registration? Number of days for which they have made application, or 90 days, whichever is earlier. Okay. So which means if they have requested for 120 days, only 90 days will be granted. If they request for 50 days, only 50 days. So maximum up to 90 days. and say they want to extend for a further period. Again, they need to make an extension application for a further period of 90 days, but not more than that. Which means at any given point of time for beyond 180 days, they cannot stay. Logic is simple: if they stay more than 180 days, so then they will be called as a resident. Na? So then what they need to do? They need to get a physical place of business registered permanently. But maximum 180 days only they can stay in a particular at a stretch. So for 180 days. And then more than 180 days they need to get a physical premises and they need to get a permanent registration. Okay, but first is 90 days and then only it will be extended for further period of 90 days by the proper officer. And for whichever period they are making application for registration, they need to make an advance tax. So they need to estimate their liability and they need to deposit that advance tax. So whenever they file the return, so at that time this advance tax gets adjusted. So whenever they pay advance tax, that will be deposited into the electronic cash ledger, and whenever they file the return disclosing their liability, so that advance tax gets deducted and balance amount they need to pay. And suppose if there is any excess amount in the electronic cash ledger as their advance tax, so they expected the sales to happen but it did not happen. Now in this case what will happen? So that amount will be refunded to them. Okay. Now these returns, what are the returns to be filed by a CTP and a NRTP? Casual taxable person will file normal returns, so that is GSTR1, GSTR3B, whereas a non-resident taxable person will be filing GSTR5. So that GSTR5 is like 3B only, so that is 20th of the month following every month and 7 days from expiry of registration, whichever is earlier. So in the last month for which expiry of registration is there, 7 days from expiry of registration or 20th of the next month, whichever is earlier, should be taken. By that time they need to file this GSTR5 and they will disclose their liability. That liability will be adjusted from this advance tax. What type of liability they need to deposit as advance tax? Is it the gross liability or the net liability? Net estimated tax liability means they need to see what are the input tax credit that is available to them and they need to see what is their estimated sales. So estimated sales liability minus input tax credit, so estimated net liability only they need to deposit as advance tax. And they can cheat the government by depositing some amount as advance tax, but that's the reason why the precedents, that is previously they would have come and they would have made some advance tax, so minimum that much amount they will be collecting usually. So at the time of submission of application, make an advance tax deposit which is equals to estimated net liability and for the period for which registration is sought. Say again we are going for extension, 90 days over, then again we are going for extension. Now again you need to make an advance tax deposit, and that advance tax shall be credited to electronic cash ledger, which shall be adjusted against final liability to be determined, and excess if any will be refunded. Okay, so that's what, adjusted against final liability. So if there is any excess, that will be refund from the cash ledger. And what is the procedure for registration? For CTP, normal procedure only, whatever we have discussed. But for a NRTP, there is a simplified procedure that is available. I have given the distinguishing points between casual taxable person and non-resident taxable person. Okay, so whatever we have discussed, that I have given. And non-resident taxable person, if he doesn't have a permanent account number, then using the passport of that person, so they need to register. Okay, so these are the differences. Next, section 27 we completed, that is special provisions applicable to CTP and NRTP. So 3 sections we have seen now. So that is 25, 26 and 27. 22, 23, 24 we completed, 25, 26, 27. Now 3 more sections are there, 28, 29 and 30. That is amendment in registration, cancellation of registration and revocation of cancellation of registration. First, amendment in registration, that is given in section 28. So that whenever we have submitted some details at the time when we made application for registration, if there are any changes in those details, so we need to make an amendment in that registration certificate. And this amendment, that is intimation, for example, change in address, change in name, change in mobile number, change in email ID, change in bank details, or change in the managing director, change in the partner details, like that, any change that has taken place, so that needs to be intimated to the department. Okay. Now here, if it is core field or non-core field, so depending upon that the procedure will change. So what is a core field? Core field means that there are 3 changes which are considered as core changes. Number 1, name of the business. Number 2, address, either principal place of business or additional place of business. Number 3, top management, that is change in Karta of HUF or change in partners or change in managing director, so etc. So then it will be called as the change in top management. So then in that case they will make an application for amendment, and that will be verified by the proper officer. Only when it is verified by the proper officer, then the amendment will take place in the registration certificate. But other changes, verification by the proper officer is not required. So other changes, example, mobile number change, OTP verification, email change, OTP verification, or change in bank details. So by default they will be changing it. So like that, whichever change that they give other than core fields, so no need of any officer's approval. And this change will be prospective or retrospective. This will be only prospective. If we make a request for retrospective, then the commissioner is having power to make the amendment retrospectively. Otherwise it will be prospective change only. And what is the time limit within which they need to submit? 15 days. They need to submit it within 15 days. Okay. So see the procedure for that. First, so we need to submit the changes, that is amendment in registration, the amendment particulars in REG 14. And when we make an application, what is the time limit for submission of that application? Within 15 days of that change. Suppose if we make application beyond 15 days, we can make application but that attracts a penalty, and that is general penalty under section 125 up to 25,000 rupees under CGST, up to 25,000 rupees under SGST. And then once we make an application within 15 working days of submission. So here it is not 15 days, it is 15 working days. First, for giving application it is 15 days. From our side it is 15 days. But their side they will give a notice within 15 working days if whatever submission that we have made has some discrepancies. Okay. Within 15 days from 15 working days from submission of REG 4, they will be giving a notice in REG 3. Seeking clarification. Now we need to give reply. Reply standard. So notice reply is standard. That is notice in REG 3, reply to the notice in REG 4. And that reply should be given within 7 working days from the date of receipt of that REG 3. And that is for submission of the clarification. And thereafter either they will accept and amend the registration or they will reject. So within 7 working days. So within 7 working days of receipt of submission by the assessee, so they will pass, REG 15 if they want to do the amendment, and if they don't want to do the amendment, the rejection will be in REG 5. Okay. So this is a regular procedure. Only the time limits you need to remember. So 15 days for resubmitting, and they giving a notice 15 working days, and thereafter 7 working days. Okay. So this is with respect to the small procedure related to amendment in registration. So these are the details that they will ask. So mostly it will be like small questions, or in MCQs only it will be relevant. Then cancellation of registration, section 29. So there is another concept of suspension of registration also, which is now part of cancellation of registration. So suspension is a step that comes before passing the cancellation order. Okay. So first we need to know what are the situations or the reasons why there will be cancellation of registration. So this cancellation of registration can be done either by the registered person or suo moto. It can be initiated by the proper officer. So why a registered person make application for cancellation of registration? Let's try to analyze it. So first of all, there is a transfer of business or discontinuance of business. So what this person will do, because anyhow the transferee will obtain the registration and discontinuance of business, so then transferor is required to make an application for cancellation of registration. Why they will make an application for cancellation? Otherwise they need to file nil returns. So otherwise nil returns non-filing will attract a late fee due to that reason. And then thereafter, so there is like change in constitution resulting in change in permanent account number. In that case, we cannot submit the details in amendment in registration. So we need to make a fresh application for registration and then cancel the old registration. So again I am repeating, when there is a change in constitution, so that change in constitution resulting in change in permanent account number, say sole proprietorship firm to partnership firm or partnership firm to private limited company. So in this case there is a change in constitution that results in change in permanent account number. We cannot continue with the old registration. So obtain a new registration with the new permanent account number and cancel the old registration. So it will not lead to amendment in registration. So in that case also we will do cancellation of registration. So the registered person will make application for cancellation. And number 3, that is no longer liable to be registered. Your aggregate turnover crossed the threshold limit of 20 lakhs and you have made application for registration, got registered, and thereafter next year it came down below 20 lakhs. Even then you have paid tax. So now you made a request to the proper officer that sir, I am not going to cross 20 lakhs in future. When I cross 20 lakhs in future, I will register and pay. So right now, please allow me to pay GST, like not pay GST and withdraw from the registration, or the person is no longer liable to register under section 24. So that is, you have made interstate supply because of which you have compulsorily registered. Thereafter you have decided not to make interstate supply or making only intrastate supply. In that case also you can request a proper officer for cancellation of registration. These are the three cases where either the proper officer can initiate cancellation or the registered person can make an application for cancellation. In these three cases, either application can be made for cancellation or the proper officer can initiate. There are five other cases where the proper officer will initiate cancellation. Number one, contravention of the provisions of the act or rules. What is the meaning of contravention of the provisions of act or rules? We have in rule 21. We will discuss that. Okay. So you have contravened provisions of the act or rules. But what contraventions are notified contraventions? Or you have not filed the returns for consecutive 6 months if you are a normal taxpayer. If you are a composition scheme dealer, you have not filed returns for 3 consecutive returns, that is 3 consecutive quarters or 3 annual returns, which should be taken. So the general interpretation is that it is 3 quarterly returns. Okay, even though CMP 8 is not called as a return, it is called as a statement, but we need to take it as a return only for this purpose, because at the time when this section was drafted, it was GSTR 4 return. So which was later converted into CMP 8 statement. So non-filing of 3 quarterly statement, that's how we need to analyze. So non-filing of 6 monthly returns or non-filing of 3 quarterly statements will also lead to cancellation of registration. And you have obtained the registration by fraud. So you have not given proper details, fake details you gave, and you have obtained the registration. Or you obtained the registration but not commence business within 6 months, means voluntarily you have got the registration but you did not commence business within 6 months, then also proper officer will cancel this registration. Now, what is the meaning of the contravention of the act or rules? What contraventions leads to cancellation of registration? First, that is given in rule 21, and there are few amendments in this place. Okay, so these 3 are added. These 4 D, E, F, G, these were added. So this is an amended one. So definitely a question will be framed on this. Rule 21. What is the meaning of contravention of the provisions? Does not conduct business from the place where they have obtained registration, or issues bill of supply or invoice in violation of the provisions of act or rules, and violates the provisions of anti-profiteering. So anti-profiteering has given an order and you did not respect that order and you did not pay the dues. And then do not furnish the bank details within the prescribed time. I told you, not furnishing the bank details within 45 days from the date when you make that is when you get registration certificate or due date of filing first return, whichever is earlier. So which means that is a violation that leads to again cancellation of registration, contravention of the provisions. And then avails ITC in contraventions of section 16. So conditions are not fulfilled but you took the ITC. You have not actually received the goods but you took the ITC based on fake invoices. So like that. Okay. And then next one is that liability in GSTR 1 is greater than the liability in GSTR 3B. Means you have declared lot of invoice in GSTR 1 but you paid only less tax in GSTR 3B. So then also it leads to cancellation for any 1 or more tax periods. And then last case, Rule 86B. Rule 86B is that you have to pay 1% of your total liability using the cash ledger. Okay, whatever is your liability, gross liability, even though you have sufficient balance of input tax credit, you have to pay that liability at least 1% using your cash ledger. That is Rule 86B. And this is not applicable to all. This is applicable to only those people whose monthly turnover exceeds 50 lakhs. Okay, so these are the contraventions of any act or rules that leads to cancellation of registration. Okay, so you need to remember these lists. So this list, previous list, this 8 points are routine. That 8 points anyhow you will be remembering it, and that is not special, already asked. But this list is a new list which can be asked as a short note question. Okay, so rule 21. And then So whenever this happens, so why proper officer will be cancelling the registration? So these are all like certain offences or violations. Why proper officer will cancel registration? That's good only, not good. So when he cancel the registration, whatever is the ITC balance that is available as per section 29 subsection 5, whatever is the closing stock, on that closing stock the ITC availed needs to be reversed. So on balance ITC, if any, will be lapsed. So that is a disadvantage with respect to this cancellation of registration, and immediately you need to make a fresh application for registration because your aggregate turnover has crossed the threshold limit. So therefore immediately you have to make application for registration and you need to continue with the new registration. It is like loss of input tax credit, that is a major drawback with respect to this sudden cancellation of registration. And then whenever there is a cancellation of registration, immediately they will not cancel. So first they need to inquire. So till the time they complete the cancellation proceedings, there will be suspension of registration till the time cancellation proceeding happens. Suppose if I make an application for cancellation, so I will be selecting from which date I want the cancellation to be done. So from that date, suppose if I am not selecting the date on which application is made, so from that date till the conclusion of the cancellation proceedings, my registration will be suspended, which means that I will have a registration but that registration will not be active. Okay, so but cancellation of registration, I don't have the registration at all. And this suspension of registration, during the period when my registration is suspended, I cannot make any taxable supplies by giving tax invoice, which means I can make taxable supplies but I cannot give a tax invoice for that. Okay, and then next thing, I cannot file returns. So which means that on my inward supply, whatever GST I have paid, I cannot take it as ITC. So that is the limitation. Means as good as you are cancelled the registration, you are not a registered person, like that you will be treated, and officially the cancellation will happen at a later point of time. So until that point of time, there will be suspension of registration. So in principle, you will be treated like not a registered person. Okay. And now it so happens that the application for cancellation is rejected. Then what we need to do? For this period for which your registration is suspended, you have to file the returns and pay the taxes. Sir, but I did not collect the tax from the recipient. So you give a revised tax invoice at a later point of time within 1 month from the date when the cancellation order is when the application is rejected. So then you are no longer cancel, so you will continue with the registration. So that suspension whatever is given is a temporary. So then that for that period also we need to file returns and we should have paid the taxes. So give a revised tax invoice to recover that GST from the recipient within 1 month from the date on which application for cancellation is rejected. Okay, so therefore once a registered person has applied for cancellation of registration or the proper officer seeks to cancel his registration, the proper officer may say, is this suspension of registration compulsory? No, the suspension of registration is not compulsory, it may be suspended. So whether any opportunity of being heard to be given before suspension of registration, not required. Opportunity of being heard is not required for initiating suspension of registration. So once you make application, you are knowing that there is suspension. When proper officer initiates cancellation also, immediately the registration will be suspended. So there is no compulsion for the opportunity of being heard, but if they want, they can give. Okay. Relating to cancellation of registration, suspension of registration can be offered without affording any reasonable opportunity of being heard. If they want to give, they can give, but there is no compulsion on their part. So this is the latest amendment. So previously opportunity of being heard should be given, but now it is not compulsory. And what is the period for which registration will be suspended? Already I told you, when you make application for registration from the date you select or the date of application, so whichever is later, you might have selected after 15 days. Today you are making application, you are selecting the cancellation date as after 15 days. So after 15 days from now will only be taken as the date of suspension of registration. So till the date of order of cancellation, so till the conclusion of the cancellation proceedings. Suppose when proper officer initiates cancellation, so the date on which they have intimated about cancellation till the date of conclusion of the proceedings. Okay. And a registered person whose registration has been suspended as above shall not make any taxable supply. Means that is, they can make taxable supply but cannot issue tax invoice during the period of suspension. And also they cannot file returns, which means that they cannot take ITC. And the suspension is deemed to be revoked upon completion of the cancellation proceedings by the proper officer. And so whenever cancellation proceedings are concluded, the suspension is removed and the cancellation order will be passed. Okay. Now, what happens? Additional case of suspension. So, apart from few cases of cancellation of registration, they have given few cases for suspension of registration as the doubt for which there can be suspension of registration. Already we know one, liability reported in GSTR 1 is greater than the liability as per GSTR 3B. Also, the ITC as per 2A and ITC as per 3B is compared. ITC as per 2A is only 4 lakhs, but ITC as per 3B is somewhere 6 lakhs. So how you could take more ITC in 3B than ITC as per 2A or 2B? So in this case, if there are significant differences identified by the officer, then they will give an intimation of suspension and notice for cancellation, and within 30 days we need to furnish a reply as to why registration should not be cancelled. Okay, so this is an additional case of suspension. Again, it is also an amendment. Okay, so they will be intimating us the suspension and give a notice for cancellation. Within 30 days we need to furnish the reply, and if the officer is satisfied, they will drop the cancellation, otherwise they can conclude the cancellation. Okay, then section 30, revocation of cancellation. What is this? So cancellation order is passed. Now when cancellation order is passed, already for the period for which you were under suspension, you are like unregistered person. Now officially you are unregistered person. So now you don't want the cancellation to happen. So you can make an application for revocation for cancellation. So that application for revocation for cancellation can be made within 30 days, and it can be extended for a further period of 30 days by additional or joint commissioner, and plus 30 days by commissioner. So here already some 30 days period is there na? Already some 30 days period is there. So from the 30 days period, that is from the date when you have got the order for cancellation, within 30 days you need to make an application for revocation of cancellation in RAG 21. So from the date, within 30 days as approved by the additional commissioner, and plus 30 days by commissioner. Okay, so we can submit. So which means we have a time limit of 90 days. So 30 plus 30 days by a additional or joint commissioner plus 30 days by commissioner, provided they approves. Okay, we can make an application for revocation of cancellation. But one important point is that whatever is the pending returns before making application for cancellation needs to be filed if the cancellation is on account of non-filing of returns. Because of non-filing of returns, that is also one of the ground for cancellation. So whatever returns that are pending, so all those pending returns needs to be filed before making application for revocation. Return including taxes shall be filed before application if the registration was cancelled due to failure to furnish the return. Now what has happened? Proper officer is satisfied. Whether the proper officer is satisfied with respect to this? Yes, proper officer is satisfied. Then within revoke cancellation order and issue order in form REG 22. If the proper officer is not satisfied, within 7 days they will give a notice, and within 7 days we need to give the reply to the notice. So what is the time limit here? Here 7 days or 7 working days that is given. So here they gave reply within 7 days, notice within 7 working days. So here days refers to working days. Days refers to working days. Days refers to working days. Okay. So within that time, so the reply needs to be furnished, and thereafter within 30 days from the date when you furnish the reply, if the proper officer is satisfied, yes, revoke cancellation, otherwise reject application. So this is the procedure for revocation of cancellation of registration. Say they have revoked the cancellation order. Now when they revoke the cancellation order, so then all pending returns which are required to be filed before revocation of cancellation order, so needs to be filed. Okay, so all the pending returns whatever is there, that is whatever the returns that you need to file, that you have filed, even for the period for which they are revoking, for that period also whatever returns is there, that you should have filed. So this is that procedure for revocation of cancellation of registration. With this we completed registration